Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Chris Mueller. From the world of cinema comes one of the most popular rock and roll biopics of all time, featuring a legendary icon whose troubled upbringing leads to a hard-living life of drugs and alcohol, even as he dominates the musical landscape and chases the woman who will eventually become his soulmate. We're talking about Walk the Line. Walk the Line was released on November 18, 2005 and is the real-life drama/love story of legendary musician Johnny Cash. The film was directed by the critically acclaimed James Mangold, whose biggest hits include Girl Interrupted, The Wolverine, and Logan. The film's beginnings are actually connected to the mid-1990s when Cash sought to have his life story told in a big-budget film. Mangold came to the project in the late 90s, and by 2001 the script was being shopped around to the studios. Fox 2000 Pictures eventually greenlit the project. Walk the Line stars Joaquin Phoenix in the role as Johnny Cash. Phoenix met Cash long before learning of the film and actually believed he wasn't the best fit for the part. But Phoenix moved ahead with the project and embraced the role, making it his own. Reese Witherspoon portrays June Carter, the singer-songwriter who met Cash while on tour. Carter and Cash eventually began a relationship which ultimately led to their marriage. Both Phoenix and Witherspoon performed their own vocals on every song featured in the movie and on the film's soundtrack. Other key figures in Cash's story are featured in the film as well, including John's parents and first wife, as well as other rock and roll icons including Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, and Elvis Presley. The film follows Cash during his early years and subsequent rise to fame. His struggles with drug addiction are detailed, as is his infidelity, and issues with his father, which stem from the death of John's older brother, who was tragically killed at a young age. Walk the Line was a hit with moviegoers and critics alike. The film made over $187 million at the box office on a budget of $28 million, and was the highest-grossing musical biopic to that point. The film earned Phoenix a Golden Globe for Best Actor, as well as an Academy Award nomination, and earned Witherspoon the Oscar for Best Actress. The film's soundtrack also earned acclaim as well, winning the Grammy for Best Compilation Soundtrack Album. Walk the Line is regarded by many as the best musical biopic of all time. The movie continues to be an entertaining, heartbreaking, and heartwarming look at one of the most legendary rock and roll icons the world has ever known. And that's the lowdown on Walk the Line. I am not a country music fan. I preface this episode with that statement. Anyone that knows me personally, in terms of family, friends, colleagues, work people, whatever, just casual acquaintances can all pretty much line up in a row and tell you, yeah, don't be talking about country music. It's not Tom's jam. It's not. I can't help it. I'm in the South. I'm in North Carolina. And you would think, I don't know if you would think, but maybe you would assume, oh, that Tom must like him some bluegrass. Well, guess what? Nope, not at all. It's not my thing. In my previous lives as a single man, I dated women who were like, "Aw, shucks, I loves me some country music. I'll get you into it." And I'm like, no, you won't. And none of them ever did. The charms of the devil never swayed this man's opinion. I'm just saying. Having said all that, I'm a major fan of Johnny Cash. I have never considered Johnny Cash to be a country music artist. I just haven't. And maybe that's me trying to avoid the fact that he played the Grand Ole Opry and he's got that southern twang in his voice and he's, country music. People love Johnny Cash and worship him. I've always considered Cash to be what the word that a lot of country music singers like to use and label themselves, an outlaw. That's what I've always kind of looked at him as. He did things his way. He never sold out. He never did what the man told him to. Cash had one way of doing it, and that was his way. He never had the perfect voice, wasn't the world's best songwriter, but man, his style, his image, and his voice, which is iconic, the total package, the wearing the black, everything together, his relationship and eventual marriage to June Carter. I mean, everything that goes into play with the legend of Johnny Cash, the Man in Black. And a lot of that was obviously epitomized in Walk the Line. Joaquin Phoenix, what I would believe that most people would agree is his most his best performance. I mean, in this day and age in 2021, you could bring up the Joker, I suppose, and that movie has a lot of fans. And as a comic book guy, I wasn't in love with it. That's another pod for another time. It is what it is. But again, I think that Walk the Line is Joaquin Phoenix's quintessential role as an actor. So, Chris, I'll hit you with it right off the bat. In terms of overall performance in a film and embodying, not, I want to say character, but embodying the man that he portrayed, how do you rate Joaquin Phoenix in Walk the Line?
Oh, I mean, he does an amazing job in this. Just the fact that he got the singing voice down as well as he did is so impressive. But you hear people who knew Johnny Cash who've watched this film be like, there were points when I just felt like I was watching young Johnny. Like that's how much work he put into this role. So yeah, the fact that he lost the Oscar that year actually kind of upset me at the time because I loved this movie so much when I first saw it, and I was like, he lost to Capote? What is going on?
Yeah, no kidding.
Which Capote is like, it's a well-made movie, but that was like, to me, I look at a guy like Philip Seymour Hoffman and I think he sleepwalked through that role. Like that was nothing for him. And then I look at this and I think like, man, Joaquin kind of tortured himself for this movie.
Just by nature of who he is, by virtue of the fact of the kind of guy he is, you see him in interviews and whatnot, you can never quite tell if is he being himself? Is he messing with Jimmy Kimmel right now? Is he just having fun with the audience, or is he really, eccentric, and is he really that far out of left field, or does he know that's how he's perceived and he just sits back and goes, oh, I can't wait to do this, I'm gonna have fun with him? I can never really tell if it's an actor, if he really is the guy that we see, you know what I mean? So
yeah, especially because he spent like a year basically playing a character for a movie nobody knew he was making with Casey Affleck.
right.
So that, like, I think some people still look back at that and judge him weirdly, which, whatever. But yeah, Joaquin Phoenix is a great actor. He's proven that time and time again. And this is definitely one of the highlights of his filmography so far.
Yeah, and I mean, he raised the bar, and I can't make this statement for 100% certain because I'm not sure. But is he the first guy to do the actual entire soundtrack as the singer, with no original vocals on the album? I mean, I can't swear to it, but it seems like maybe he is.
If I'm not mistaken, when did Ray come out?
I think Ray was after Walk the Line, I believe, because I was thinking about that.
No, Ray was the year before, according
Was
to
it
this.
really?
Yeah, it was 2004,
Wow.
and this was 2005. I believe the Ray soundtrack is similar,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't say for sure. Like, I know that this soundtrack, if you go buy the actual CD for this movie, it's all Joaquin Phoenix's versions of those songs. I can't
Yes.
say for sure whether the Ray soundtrack has any original Ray Charles music or if it's all just Jamie. But yeah,
I think it's a mix of both, if I'm not mistaken.
two definitely of the most defining performances in musical biopics right there, though. I mean, and the fact that they happened back to back years is crazy.
Yeah, I don't know when the last time is that's ever happened. And for both movies to be as incredibly good as they are, which again is mind numbing.
Yeah, I mean, recently we had the Queen biopic and then the Elton one, but I don't think, like, both of those were popular and won awards and stuff, but I never felt like they had the same kind of effect on the musician's legacy as this movie did for Johnny.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, it's funny how, especially with an icon like Cash, you get, uh, you know, I would think, I don't want to say everybody, but I would think that most people are familiar at least with one or two of his songs if they don't know all of them. Um, Today's younger generation might be yes or no, depending on where they're being raised and who's raised them, obviously. But when a film like this hits, that soundtrack hits, and man, it brings everybody back to his catalog, which is always a good thing, not only for for Cash's estate, but for his family and his fans, and plus for the guy's music, because there's so much of it that I don't want to say is forgotten. But I was talking to you before we went live here today that you kind of put the movie back on the shelf because you've forgotten it, and and then it just sits there until you watch it again. Maybe that's the case with this guy's music to some degree, you think?
Well, when you have the size of a music library that Johnny Cash does, like he kept making music for decades. So it's sort of like with Bob Dylan, like there's so much of his music out there that even some of the biggest fans, there's a couple songs that they're probably not familiar with.
Yeah, for sure. And this guy, his career, I mean, he went a good long time in the music business. So yeah, he's got a wide array of music and an assorted catalog of things he did over the years. Um, I watched this film again for the first time in a very long time, and I had forgotten quite a bit of it, which is insane. And I always enjoyed the movie when it first came out, but man, it's watching again and seeing Joaquin in this role. And you're right, he's excellent, and he brought Cash back to life in this film. And on the notes I was reading in prep for this episode is that he had met Cash and kind of hung out, was trying to pick up his mannerisms and his voice and his singing style and the way he carried himself. And at the time, Phoenix said that he felt like there was 10 or 20 other actors better at the role than he was. But I'm thinking, who were those guys? Because, man, he's as close as I think anybody could have gotten. I don't know if anybody else, if I had to pick names out of a hat, I don't think I could have picked another actor that could have nailed it the way this guy did. I mean, it's crazy how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes casting falls together perfectly. I mean, between him and Reese as Carter, like, you really just, these director, writers, whatever, kind of fell into a lucky situation here because they had two people who nailed the vocal performances in addition to the acting. And when you look at old pictures of Johnny Cash, like him and Joaquin kind of have a resemblance.
They do, actually. The slick back hair and wearing black and everything. And yeah, like there's one scene in the movie when it's when June comes into the music hall there, and all the guys are on stage and they're drunk, and they've got a matinee show in a few hours, whatever time it is supposed to be that morning. And when she comes in, and you can see her over his shoulder, and then when the camera switches and Cash is sort of at the foreground, she's in the background, the camera goes to her, and he's a little fuzzy. Like the shot of Phoenix is a little fuzzy. And in that instant, I was like, God, my God, that's Cash sitting there. Because the lighting was just right. And like I say, it was a little out of focus, and that was pretty cool. He does embody the guy. And I mean, like I said before, he brings him to life. It's crazy how well he does. This film, and we talked a little bit about this before we went live here today. This film's got a lot of great music in it, obviously. And June, and we'll go through the list of the cast here shortly, but, Reese Witherspoon does her own singing as well. And, June Cash, God bless her, did not have the best singing voice, as she said in the film here more than one time. And you go back and listen to those old recordings. I mean, her and Cash loved each other, obviously, but you can make the argument that maybe Reese sounded better on the soundtrack than maybe June did. No disrespect, kids. It's my own subjective point of view here. But I thought for what she was supposed to do and what she was supposed to deliver, I thought she did just fine on the soundtrack.
No, I think I agree with you. She probably has a slightly better voice than the real June in a lot of ways. I mean, Reese, I think she's just always been a good singer, but when she took this role, she like really got serious with the vocal lessons, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. Like her and Joaquin both spent 6 months with some coach before the movie started. So, I will say that there's one song in particular, what is it, that they sing in the movie together as a duet. Oh, Jackson.
Yes.
And that, I would say, if you listen to the original recording and then the one they did, that is the closest thing in the movie to being like a perfect representation. Like they just got every tone and note of that song right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're totally right. That's the one, as far as a duet is concerned, they got the closest. I'll agree with that. You can hear the differences subtly in tone and in terms of Joaquin and Johnny's voices both, but that's to be expected. But again, I think with what he had and the fact that he embodies, I don't know, could you call Joaquin Phoenix a method actor like Daniel Day-Lewis? You think he'd go that far with him?
I mean, I've never heard stories about him staying in character like between scenes, but I don't know, maybe he does, but I would imagine that he's probably a pretty intense guy when it comes to he takes his job very seriously. He's one of
Mhm.
those, like, there's actors and then there's thespians, you know, and
Right.
he's he seems like he's closer to the thespian. Like he views acting very seriously and really tries to transform himself for each role. And, you know, that's why the dude's been nominated so many times for so many movies and keeps getting work. Like is a really great actor.
Yeah, he really is. Um, like we said, we're going to go down through the list of this cast here. Uh, can't say enough good things about Reese as June. She's got that sort of that church girl innocence in her eyes and that look about her, the all American girl, like the all American country girl. And she's got that sass. She says it herself in the film. She's got that sass about her. She's really, if you break it down, she's maybe what Cash really wants in a person because he's looking for that in himself, and maybe he can't quite get it, or he used to have it, but like he says in the film, he's done a lot of bad things, and he's not the greatest person around. Wasn't a great husband. You could argue that maybe he wasn't the best father because he wasn't there, but that's another conversation. Um, I don't know, but it kind of feels like you sort of go for the person that maybe has what you want, maybe doesn't have quite the same personality, but has the traits that maybe you wished you had. That kind of feels like a connection that is made here. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I'm dead wrong, but it's almost like she's the innocence and she's pure, but maybe that's what he's fallen in love with. And plus the fact that he's familiar with her because he grew up hearing her and her family on the radio. And the fact that they actually met, went on tour, played together, and got married later. That's mind twisting on its own. I mean, I think Reese did a fantastic job in this film.
I will say that it does feel like Vivian Cash got the shaft in this movie.
Yes.
Like they really went out of their way to portray her as like, oh, you don't mind if Johnny leaves this woman because all she does is harp on him. And I read that apparently the oldest daughter that he has from that marriage like walked out of the screening of this movie because of how
Mm.
her mother was portrayed. And I get that, but the movie is specifically trying to tell the story of June and Johnny. So
Yeah.
unfortunately they have to take some liberties there. But yeah, that was the one part of the movie where I looked at it and I was like, wow, they're really going out of their way to make you want him to be with June, even though like he's cheating on his wife and family and all that stuff.
Yeah, she did. Short in the shaft's the best way to put it. Vivian, portrayed by Jennifer Goodwin. And she actually is known for HBO series Big Love, which I honestly have not ever seen before. Um,
She's also in that Once Upon a Time show.
yeah, I think you're right. She was Snow White, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt that way too. And it without knowing the backstory, when I saw this movie for the first time, I thought, man, you think maybe she's really that harsh? And then when I heard all this stuff about the oldest daughter later, I'm like, oh, they really took liberties with that. I mean, there's moments when it feels like she pulls back a little bit, but most of the time she has teeth and she's coming at him. And it's like, your dreams aren't going to pay the bills, that kind of thing. And I'm like, dude, come on. And, this movie was parodied later by John C. Riley.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I am not in love with that movie. I love him to death, but I'm not in love with that film. It's not my favorite thing he's ever done, but it's almost the same idea as like he would stand there and get an idea for a song over something she said. And it's like, all right, snap out of it. You're not gonna be writing a song in front of me like this. I mean, it's off the deep end on that, right? But yeah, she just overbearing and forget about your dreams, John. You need to be here and forget all that crap. My dad's got a job for you. I'm like, come on, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I know that this movie sort of kind of set in place a lot of the tropes that we now see in every biopic. Like, it
Yeah.
always starts with a musician right before one of their most famous performances reflecting on their life. This movie, it was the Folsom City or the Folsom prison concert.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, they did the same thing in the Queen biopic and in the Elton biopic. Like, it's funny how John C. Reilly called attention to all that stuff in that movie before people even picked up on those tropes. Because now you watch some of these musical biopics and you're like, well, this is just Walk the Line again.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, is it really that way, or is it that way because it's that way? I mean, could you
It's
do
artistic license.
right? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like could you really land the camera on the shoulder of any of these guys during the course of their career, like a time traveling concept, and actually pick up where these films pick up? And maybe, I don't know. It's interesting to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how this movie, like, I don't hear it talked about very much anymore, and yet so many of the things from this movie kind of set the tone for all that stuff. It's really weird.
Kind of sucks this movie's not talked about anymore, because I've upon watching it again for the first time in a long time, it's so good. It's
I
so
think it's
good.
because we've gotten so many musical biopics. Like, they
Yeah.
weren't as common when this got made. Like, I know we said Ray came out the year before, but even then, like, now we're getting, it seems like, one or two a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels that way.
And and it's because they're interesting stories. People who grew up liking these musicians and like their music, they feel connected to these people. So when they watch these movies, even if the movie is a complete fabrication, which
Mm-hmm.
some of them are, they still feel like a little closer to these people, I guess.
And once upon a time, all we had was Gary Busey is in the Buddy Holly story, which is it's a fantastic film, and Buddy Holly was a freaking legend. And Gary Busey's best performance in the history of Gary Busey, and this was before he went all wackadoodle. I love Busey. I'm sorry, the guy's off his rocker, but what's not to love? But man, that movie set the tone. I often refer to that as like the original Superman of comic book films. Like it was hard to match that. I mean, how in the world do you top how well he embraced that? And you put glasses and the right hair on him, and you're like, my God, that's Buddy Holly in person. Like, hard to match that. But man, if there's a movie that comes close in terms of getting it right, like aesthetically and the instruments and the sound and the clicks and buzzing of the amps, I mean, I think this movie gets close, man. Robert Patrick as Ray Cash. If the thing called for, okay, we need a hardline country guy, country man. Forget country boy. He's a country man, country strong, right? And he's had a hard life. He's a hard drinking, hard living man. And he's worked the fields his whole life. And he's plowing the fields and running the tractor. And he's got dirt under his fingernails. And guy's never smiled a day in his life. I mean, that's Robert Patrick is friggin' perfect as Johnny's dad in this movie, dude.
Oh yeah, I love Robert Patrick. Whenever I see him pop up in anything, I'm happy. And he's got such a good sense of humor about his own career.
Yeah.
Like, he knows that the T-1000 will always be his most famous role, and he's more than willing to parody that sometimes. And like, yeah, he doesn't get enough credit in Hollywood, in my opinion. Robert Patrick is one of those guys that's just solid in everything. And yeah, he was great opposite Joaquin in some of those scenes they had together, especially at the end of the movie when you kind of see them reconciled years
Oh,
later.
so good. Yeah. So good. Was it Thanksgiving when they're at the dinner table? And like, John is guilty, and John's a drug addict, and John is kind of a bad guy. But dude, I wanted him to dive across that table and get a hold of his dad for the first time, to stand up to him. And that whole scene feels like I just want to kill him. I just want to strangle him, and I want to grab him so bad I can't stand it, but I can't, because his dad is winning. His dad is in firm control. I think John's still scared of him, and he's intimidated, and maybe out of fear and respect both. Like, I can only raise my voice so much, even though it's my house. I'm going to get up and leave the table instead of telling them how I really feel. Like, man, they had a lot of chemistry in this film, dude. Like you said, the way they played off each other was great.
Yeah, and I actually really liked the two young kids they had in the beginning too. I thought they did a great job playing little Johnny and little Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just like what a crazy backstory to have as a child.
Oh man, and there's one of the lines that Jack, I guess the brother that died very early in the film. He was wanting to be a pastor, and he's telling him that he's reading the Bible, and Johnny basically says, "I don't have," because they called him Jr. Right, but uh, he says, "Well, you know, I don't know the things that you know. In other words, you're book learning, and I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, but you know all the songs in the hymnal." And he says, "Yeah, but you know, there's more words in the Bible than there are the hymnal, right?" And he says, "Well, you know, you can't help nobody if you can't tell them the right story." And that's like, please tell me that actually happened, because that kind of became Johnny Cash's entire career. Like, I'm going to tell him a story. I'll help someone in the crowd tonight that, you know, I'm singing about real people and real feelings and real situations, and someone will attach to it and it'll mean something to them. So I found it funny how that line from the very beginning of this movie played all the way through the film. But you're right, those two kids nailed it.
And one of them is now MacGyver.
Is he really?
One of those kids is Lucas Till. Yeah.
Nice. How did I know that kid? How did I know? I didn't know him from MacGyver. I knew him from something else.
Well, he was also in X-Men, Days
That's
of
it.
Future, or no, First Class mostly.
That's it. Yeah, that's how I know him. I swear I think I know him from before then too, but I can't remember how. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, honestly, I didn't even know that. That's a good little bit of trivia there. Yeah, the scene where they're working in the cotton fields and Johnny's mom is singing, and then he just naturally starts singing when he's behind her. And again, I go back to that conversation between the kids when Johnny says, songs are easy. And Jack says, well, not for me, they're not. And again, that's like the difference. Like, this kid, from the moment he was growing up, he knew that he wanted to be a musician. He knew this is what he wanted to do, which, yeah, again, I think it sets the tone for the whole film. Going back to the cast list, I don't have much on McGee Monteith, who played evidently John's mom, Reba. I don't know what the story is with the actress, but I have like nothing on her. Dallas Roberts as Sam Phillips. Now, Sam Phillips is a whole other pod for a whole other time. That guy's backstory and that guy's career as a producer is the stuff of legend, just as much as Cash is. But I thought for the little bit that we saw him in this film that Dallas Roberts did a bang up job as Sam Phillips. And the conversation they had in the studio when John and the guys are singing gospel, and he's like, yeah, what do you want to sing? You know, what, you really believe this? And he's like, you trying to say I don't believe in God? It's so funny how he twists it. Like, John was just ready to snap and get defensive. But he's like, I got a couple of songs I wrote in the Air Force. You got something against the Air Force? And Sam Phillips goes, no. And he says, well, I do. And then he starts singing, you know, Folsom Prison Blues. So what about Sam Phillips in this movie, man?
Oh, that was a great scene. And like, it's such a short part of the movie. Like, the character's not in the movie very much, and yet it's so memorable.
Yeah.
And I was trying to put together, like, the whole time I was watching this recently, I'm like, where have I seen that guy more recently? And I was racking my brain, and then I finally looked him up, and I forgot that he was in The Walking Dead.
He was in The Walking Dead.
He's that guy that was walking around with the duct tape all over his jacket, and he lived in the little settlement with the mayor or the governor.
Yeah.
He was like the governor's right-hand man.
Yeah. Milton Marnett.
Yeah.
Season 3. Yeah, Walking Dead. That's good stuff.
I was like, it was driving me nuts. I'm like, what do I know him from? What do I know him from? And then I finally just broke down and looked it up, because I like to try and figure that stuff out to keep my brain working.
Yeah, same here.
Before I look it up, but I had to, and sure enough, I'm like, oh, that's who he is.
Dude, I am always the guy. If I'm sitting there trying to think of something, my wife will say, Google it. And I'm like, shh, just give me a minute. And dude, I'll spend upwards of a half hour, depending on what it is, and I'll just suddenly blur it out like, it's Billy Squire, that's it. It'll just be some random thing out of nowhere that I forget who sung a song or played a guitar or played a role, and I can't help myself. I'm like you. I have to figure it out. I don't need Google for that until I need Google, and then I'll have to break down, but I'll fight every urge to do so.
Well, especially if it's something that I know somewhere in my brain. Like, it's
Right.
my own pride won't let me just.
That's it.
Yeah. It's like I want to know that my memory is still okay.
Absolutely. Pride is the best word for it for sure. Let's talk about the Tennessee 2. What began as the Tennessee 2. Dan John Miller played Luther Perkins, who was the guitarist to Cash's left in the band that later became the Tennessee 3. I don't know a lot about this guy. He's actually singer-songwriter and actor. He's currently a guitarist and lead vocalist for the Gothic Country Garage Band Blanche. Gothic Country Garage Band. Now I have to go look that up.
That's like 3 random genres all thrown together, isn't it?
Yes. Oh man,
what's Gothic Country?
Garage. That's a great song.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got to look that up. That sounds way more interesting than it has a right to. I thought he was great. It's funny because the whole time I'm seeing the movie, I'm sitting there thinking, do I know him? Like, he just has the look of, okay, he's obviously really playing that guitar, or he's an actor that learned how to play it for the movie, or played the few songs he had to play when the camera zoomed in on him. But like, it really felt like he was an actual guitarist. And I was like, okay, if he is, then I must know him, or maybe I do. But it never clicked. So I still don't think I know him. But he just has that look of, he kind of looks like a bass player. Because most bass players, most of us guys who play bass don't really have a lot of facial features. And we're not like lead guitars shredding and howling and screaming, and bass players have like a deadpan expression. He looks like a bass player to me. And meanwhile, the bass player's on the opposite side of Cash, rocking out and bopping back and forth, but the guitarist is standing still. But the real life Luther Perkins is a fantastic guitarist. I mean, he's one of those guys that just played the notes right where he needed to play them, was perfect with Cash. I mean, it felt like the real guy kind of stepped out of a time warp or something and got in this movie, man.
Yeah, just the casting all around in this was good, and not everybody looked exactly like the person they were portraying, but they all got the feel of the character.
Yeah.
Like, the guy they had playing Jerry Lee Lewis, I don't know his name off the top of my head, I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, every scene that he's in with Johnny, like, he kind of draws a little bit of attention. Obviously, Waylon Jennings' kid, we talked about that. Shooter Jennings playing his dad. That was a little nice inside thing, but yeah, they just did a really good job making the movie feel authentic to the time.
Yeah, the hair, the costuming, the makeup, the instruments. Yeah. I mean, you could essentially refer to these movies as period pieces, which I think that term's usually reserved for like Victorian movies and, you know, that kind of stuff. But like, this really is a period piece if you think about it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know that the film spans like 20, 30 years of his life, but yeah, it's absolutely a period piece, especially when you look at the costumes, the cars, all that stuff. And they got all the details pretty good, right down to like the type of glasses people were wearing.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. Waylon Payne was Jerry Lee Lewis.
Okay. I wonder if I know him from anything else. Because he did a great job in that, and I was like, wow, I wonder if this guy's acted in any more stuff.
He's a musician himself, which again, if you're gonna get, if you want it to be authentic, I don't know, you could get actors and teach them. I mean, there's great behind the scenes stuff about That Thing You Do, which is one of the cutest little movies about 50s rock that you'll ever watch. And for the most part, the guys in the band didn't know how to play. And what happened was the camera would close up, and as soon as the camera went down to their hands, they were staring straight down so they wouldn't forget the chords. So they had to play it all cool when the camera's showing their face. But when it went down their hands, they had to really concentrate because they learned the songs they had to learn for the film, but then may or may not have kept playing after the fact. But if you get authentic musicians, you don't have to sweat the details like that.
Yeah, I know Joaquin did actually learn the guitar for this, and
Nice.
Reese also learned, what was it, the auto harp or something like that.
Yeah.
So they put in the effort, but for the rest of those roles, it's smart to say, like, we're going to get a musician and hope he's a decent actor instead of let's go get an actor and train him to play this instrument.
Speaking of musicians, Larry Bagby, who portrayed Marshall Grant, who was the bass player in the Tennessee Three, rocking on the upright bass, and then later on the electric bass, always had a smile on his face, was always bopping to the music. He was the active one on stage next to Johnny. And again, I thought he did fantastic.
Was he the guy who builds the little bomb?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because
that's such a weird random scene for them to throw in.
Right?
What are you doing? Building the bomb. And then 10 minutes later, they put it up in a tree and blow off a branch. It's like, what the heck is this? And I get the feeling that that's something that really happened. Otherwise, why would they put it in the movie?
Exactly right. Why would they throw that in? Yeah. But again, he's an actor / musician. I mean, I don't know. It just did the right thing by doing what they did there. Yeah, that's good stuff. So the Tennessee Three is established, and again, we talked about the scene where they go into Sun Records and they're trying to get the deal, and Johnny just, I don't know, he just makes it sound like he has to do this. Like there's a movie about the Beatles, very few movies that actually really get anything right about them because their history people think is so well known, but you could easily screw it up. It's called Backbeat. Really, really good flick to me as a Beatle guy, but there's a scene where someone's talking to John Lennon's character and it says, what is it? You're mad or you're angry. And he says, I'm not angry. I'm effing desperate. And he just had this look on his face like, I have to do this. I have to get out of this town. I have to get out of Liverpool. This has to work. This is not an option. And I get that. I got that a couple different times in this film where he has that look like, I can't go to a 9-to-5 job. That is not me. I have to do this. Like, this is all I got. There's no plan B. I thought they did a great job getting that point across in this. And I can't swear that that's actually where Cash was coming from, but dude, it really felt that way in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, the producer who like put this whole thing together, I know he spent years talking to Johnny Cash in preparation for this movie, just like tons and tons of sit down interviews and all that stuff. So I feel like that's why a lot of people like the authentic portrayal Joaquin put in, because so much of it is based on conversations that Cash actually had with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not coming from a place of let's base the movie off of a book somebody wrote about him. They're basing it off of his own words to this guy who made the movie.
That's great stuff, man. So I'm seeing on the cast list here Shelby Lynn, who's a musician, obviously, as Carrie Cash. And I guess she was one of Johnny's daughters in this movie, right?
Yes. I mean, they spent so little time with the children that I don't remember what the kids' names were.
Yeah, me neither. And I don't know that she ever got into music because there's no link to her name to anything else. So it could be she never even got in the business. Tyler Hilton is Elvis Presley. I got to get your take on this because, again, actor / songwriter, singer. Yeah, I don't know. What's your take? I'll get your take on it before I give you mine about Tyler Hilton as Elvis.
Elvis is such a weird guy because so many people have played him, and it never really feels like anybody's gotten the portrayal perfect.
Mm-hmm. Kurt Russell.
It was
Russell.
It was close.
I'm telling you, man, I love Kurt Russell as Elvis, dude.
It was close. But yeah, the guy in this movie, like, he doesn't take me out of the movie necessarily, but I I don't think he looked enough like Elvis to convince me. Like some of these guys, you look at it and you're like, wow, that they did a good job making him look like that dude did back then. But with Elvis, it's like you can't just give a guy that haircut and have him talk a little funny like Elvis and expect people to think he's Elvis. He's so iconic that anybody who portrays him is going to be under heavy scrutiny. So, I mean, I think he did a good job with the job he was given, and the fact that he's not a major part of the movie means, like, even if you don't like his performance, it doesn't necessarily pull the movie down.
Right. Man, you said the words take you out of the movie. That may be the best way to describe it. It didn't kill it, but in his moments, I was like, when he offered him chili cheese fries backstage behind the curtain, I'm like, eh.
And I'll be honest, like, it took me a minute to realize he was supposed to be Elvis, and it's because he just doesn't resemble him.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you listen to his voice on the soundtrack, he doesn't sound like him either.
No. And I mean, Elvis, like I said, Elvis is one of those guys that's been impersonated so many times by so many people that you end up getting either hooked on, does he look and act enough like Elvis, or does he sound enough like Elvis? It's got to be one of the two. And this guy, I just don't think captured either of them perfectly. But again, you know, he was a young guy, took a role, did it what he was asked to do. So, sure, you know, you can't fault him for that. But to me, it's like one of my favorite portrayals of Elvis is the short scene he has in the movie Forrest Gump, which is obviously totally fictional, but I felt like that's one of the few guys who got down Elvis's drawl, and like when they show him dancing around on stage doing an Elvis's signature little hip swivel that they claim he learned from Forrest.
Right, of course.
Like he just had that down, and it's like, man, they should have just made a whole Elvis movie with this guy as Elvis.
Yeah, you're right. It's not entirely fair to Tyler Hilton to, hang the blame in his door. I will say there's a couple of different times that this happens that I can remember where Cash is just off stage, like Elvis has gone on right after him, and he's out there with his band, who are also infamous, or not infamous, but a famous band that they put around him at the time too. But Cash is just off stage watching, and the camera closes up on him, and you can just see in Joaquin's face, like he's standing back, sort of in awe of Elvis. Like, this guy's got it. He's got something. Look at the way he's taking that stage. Like I love how they threw that in there. So it was like, okay, we're not going to drool over Elvis because this is not an Elvis movie, but let's at least pay respect to the fact that this guy becomes the biggest thing on planet Earth not long after the events of this film.
Yeah, and I know that they wanted to tie him into his Southern country roots a lot with the people that they put around him. But I was really shocked that there wasn't a role for Bob Dylan in this.
Yeah.
Because him and Bob Dylan, like, were good friends for a long time, I think, and did perform some stuff together. So I think they may have even appeared on each other's shows.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So, and that was another thing. Like, they really skipped over the whole Johnny Cash show phase of his career. Like, that was one scene in this movie.
If this had been like a 2-part film, I wonder if we'll ever get to the point where a rock and roll biopic would be a multiple experience. Like, if they ever did an actual Beatles, oh my God, that just hit me. Like an actual Beatles, you can make a trilogy. Like, movie 1 is them in the suits and the mop tops. Movie 2 is them in the Sgt. Pepper suits, and movie 3 is them in the denim and the long hair and the glasses. Like, I wonder if we'll ever get to that point where they'll dedicate that much time and money and that much space on a calendar to doing more than one movie about a rock and roll artist.
I don't know. It's interesting. Like, you're right there. We never see sequels to these things. Like, they try and wrap up a person's either their entire life or the most significant portion of it. And then they just don't leave room for anything else outside of that. I think it's more likely that we might at some point get maybe a TV series based on the life of a musician than a series of movies.
And with the way streaming services and everything's geared now, especially coming out of 2020, we could see big time Hollywood actors take to these streaming services and portray all kinds of characters. And we're seeing it now. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. I think the door's wide open for something like that. In terms of the situations of this movie, we see sort of the love affair that develops between June and Cash as they go through this movie, and how he's sort of admiring her from a distance, and he's as very slow and sweet to her as he can be, and then she starts to see what's really going on, and the pills become a factor, and it really feels like that the first thrust of this film is, I need music. Music's going to save me. And then it becomes, well, I need June. June's going to save me. But it's like, nothing's going to save you. You have to do it yourself. And I think maybe that's what we get when he finally dries out and he finally gets off the stuff he was on.
Which didn't happen in real life. He had drug
Right.
problems all the way up until he was a senior citizen. So I was a little surprised the movie tried to act like, oh, yeah, he just cleaned himself up at some point. But I guess when you need to have a happy ending, That's
a good point.
Yeah.
It did make it feel like it happened over the course of a weekend with her family there. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I do like that scene when his dealer shows up and the dude just drives
great.
him off with a shotgun.
Yeah.
He's just like, get the hell out of here.
That's
You're not
really,
gonna peddle
really
that
good.
crap. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, he's got the swagger, does Joaquin Phoenix, man. He's a lot of great one-liners in this flick. Why are you wearing all black? You look like you're going to a funeral. Hell, maybe I am. It's perfect. When he's getting ready to play in the prison scene in Folsom Prison, he's like, we don't want the prisoners reminded they're in prison. He's like, you think they forgot? That's just one of those lines. Like, oh my God, you can so hear Cash saying that in real life.
Oh yeah, and the prison performance is definitely one of the highlights of this movie.
Yeah.
Just that whole sequence. And from what I read, because I read some of the trivia for this beforehand, apparently Joaquin told all the guys playing wardens, don't let these fake prisoners drink, eat, or use the bathroom. Like, he wanted to create genuine tension between the characters. So, I mean, maybe that's a little bit of that method stuff coming out, but yeah, I thought that was really funny.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah, because it feels like a raucous sort of, the sound in that scene is excellent. Like, it feels like an actual foot stomping, yeah, that's really cool, dude. I really dig that a lot. James Mangold directed this movie. I mean, he directed The Wolverine and Logan. This guy's got some chops as a director, man.
Oh yeah, he's been around the block for a little while.
Yeah, for sure. I saw his name flash up at the beginning of this. I was like, oh my God, I forgot that Mangold directed this movie. I totally forgot about that.
He's one of those guys that, he has a really good career, but I just don't feel like he has that defining role. Like, everybody knows Scorsese for a specific movie that he made. Everybody loves Spielberg for one specific movie. It's either E.T. or Jurassic Park or whatever. And with Mangold's, you look at his stuff and it's like, wow, he did Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, Logan, Ford versus Ferrari, but all of those movies are so character heavy that nobody's talking about, oh, the director did such a great job, even though he does. And it's like, I almost wonder if that's the sign that he's truly a great director, is that he made sure the focus was on the performers.
Right.
I don't know, but yeah, he's good. He also did Copland, which is an underrated movie with Stallone.
Dude, it's been years since I've seen that movie, and I just remember the buzz that was coming out because at the time Stallone had never really done anything that was, I can't say Oscar worthy because my God, Rocky, for goodness sake. But at the time, it was like, well, he's doing something different. He's trying this, he's going for something that's dramatic, and there's big time actors around him. I mean, that might be something worth going back and revisiting at some point.
Yeah, Copland is actually a good movie, and I mean the cast alone is crazy. Another movie with Robert Patrick actually, but it's like Stallone, Keitel, Liotta, Robert De Niro, just like all these guys and this was 97, so like the height of their career.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's something definitely worth going back and checking out again. Um, I mean, this is. Would you call this a star-studded cast in Walk the Line? Because you go that far, or would you say you've got a couple of big names and then it's an ensemble cast, or how would you categorize this film?
I mean, I would call this movie I believe the term in Hollywood is a two-hander. It's like there's two characters at the center, and then everything else revolves around them. So this is definitely like a great cast, but it's Johnny and June's story. I don't feel anybody upstages them or even comes close to matching the importance of their characters. But everybody in the movie does such a good job that, yeah, I could see why you'd say, is it an ensemble thing? Because everyone contributes to the movie feeling authentic.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. It is the movie is about it is about Johnny and June, and like there are going to be liberties taken, which you kind of expect. And we go back to John's first wife, a lot of things that they probably could have done better, but I think all in all they did about as well as could be expected. This is not this is not necessarily something that's connected straight to the movie, but have you heard the story of the $1 Million Quartet? Do you know this story?
No.
Okay, so it's on YouTube, and dude, it is so worth your time to look it up. It is December 4th, 1956. Cash, Elvis, Jerry Lee, and Carl Perkins all happen to be at Sun Records at the same time. And there is audio. And I, after all these years of being on this planet and being the music guy that I am, had only heard about this in passing in years prior, had never bothered to look it up. And it's on YouTube right now as we speak. There's audio of this that survived, and it's amazing. And they're just goofing around and being silly. And they sing a lot of gospel in this because Elvis and Jerry Lee both, and dude, Jerry Lee, for all the stuff that's said about him, and rightfully so, because man, did he do some bad stuff. But this guy had so much guilt associated with all the things that he had done. Not excusing anything here, kids, but he was determined to become a pastor in later years. And as much as he did rock and roll and rockabilly on stage, he would do gospel off stage because he felt this pressure, this guilt, this as if God's always going to judge him. He's always being looked at harshly. And so when they put that line in the film about everybody in this car is going to hell, and she says, what about the car in front of me? He's like, well, they're going to go to hell too. Every one of us. I'm like, that's how he felt. He felt that we're doing the devil's work. We should not be doing this. But he was so good at it, and it's how he earned his living. But man, the sessions on YouTube are fantastic. I mean, you think about a dream band and like a group of all stars. I can't imagine what would have happened.
They were the traveling Wilburys of their day.
Oh, good call. Really good call. Yeah. Oh my God. I just imagine what if they'd been serious about it and cut a record as they were there that day. Jeez.
I mean, we don't have as many super groups as I think we probably should have, just based on the amount of times people have collaborated. But, these guys, a lot of these guys don't want to do something separate from the band they've been with their whole life. Like, I think Bob Dylan rarely records without the band, it's
right.
But yeah, that would have been crazy if they had actually done something together.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, kids, it's worth your time to go look it up. It's really excellent stuff. There was a couple of other things here I wanted to mention to you. I love, because sort of everybody in the film saw that he had a thing for June. Even before they actually had a thing, everybody kind of saw he was, falling for or whatnot. And the scene where his wife and kids are there and it gets really weird. And she's like, you stay away from my kids, because she can flat out see it. And I don't know that she knew about the affair at the time that scene supposedly happened. If it even happened, who knows? But there's a lot of moments like that. And then after the Thanksgiving dinner thing, when he's trying to get that tractor up the hill because of what his dad said, and she goes to the truck and her mom's like, you should just go on down there. And she's like, he's mixed up. And she's like, well, I'm not going down there. And she says, you already are down there, honey. And I thought, oh my God, that's freaking perfect. Like, another great fitting one-liner in this movie, dude. I love that scene.
Yeah, that scene's great for both of their characters because it informs a lot about who they are and what attracts them to each other. Because with her, it's like she could have had her choice of anyone she wanted at the time. Like, she was from a big famous family, and I know that there was the whole like people looked down on her because of the divorce, and people were really uptight about that back then. But when it comes down to it, like, she chose to be with Johnny, even though at the beginning it wasn't really the best matchup. They ended up being good for each other in the end.
Yeah, he seriously, seriously grieved after she passed. Like, this wasn't well, she was older. We're both older. Time passes. People die. No, he was, and it's sad to look at the video and pictures of him in his later years because he looks sad. He looks heartbroken in every picture. And maybe that's not true. Maybe that's me painting a grim picture. Maybe that's what we saw because that's what he portrayed. But maybe it was, hey John, how are you doing? Oh, I'm okay. One day at a time. Maybe that's the truth. But dude, from a distance, it's like he was heartbroken for years after she passed.
Yeah, I mean, she was older than him, so it was probably something I'm sure they had expected, or at least she did. But yeah, I mean, so much of his later music is kind of about tragedy and sadness and stuff, so that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard things said about the American albums with Rick Rubin and Trent Reznor being involved, that it was too dark and too grim. I got a buddy that believes that. Oh, I can't listen to them. Oh my God, they're suicidal. I can't do it. It's dark, and that's not Cash, and he's in a really, really bad place. And I'm like, yeah, is it something you turn up to volume 10 in your car? Probably not, but like, there's so much soul to those songs, dude. Like, he's pouring himself out on the table for you to look at. Like, he's bare naked on those songs, dude. Like, there's nothing being hidden at all. I think there's a beauty to that.
Oh, absolutely. And so many of those songs I will still hear on the radio and leave them playing, like, especially his cover of I think it's Hurt, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that one's been in so many movies. Like, it feels like a lot of his late career work ended up almost surpassing some of his early career stuff in terms of relevance. Because he was one of those guys that, like, he was always around, but there was a couple of decades where nobody was really talking about Johnny Cash. Like, he was a legend, but nobody really cared what he was doing in the music industry at the time. And then when those later albums came out and people were like, man, he's still got it. Like, yeah, you just don't see that with a lot of these musicians, like, to be able to have that resurgence so much later in their career, especially when they were known for one type of thing, 30 years ago.
And I think that you mentioned the Wilburys earlier. I think that's what they did for Orbison, actually. That's what they did for him. And Orbison's portrayed in this movie. I kind of forgot all about that. Because at the time, you're like, that's supposed to be Roy Orbison? Because we're used to the guy with the bowl haircut and the oversized glasses. But yeah, that's a good callback. But yeah, I mean, getting him back to some sort of semblance of respectability and reminding people there's a living legend walking among you, and you're not giving him his due. Like dude, that's sad all by itself. Like that guy, I'm glad that he got to make music up to the end. I'm happy that he got to. I'm happy for him that he got to. Like, keep you from your creativity, or not keep you from it, but get you to the point where people no longer care about it. That's a dagger to the heart, man. That's got, especially when you make it so personal from your own experience, and then people act like they don't want to hear it. That's a gut wrenching thing, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Man, I forgot he died in 2003. Like he died before the movie came out.
He did. Yeah.
That's crazy. So many musicians, I think it's him, Ray Charles, and another guy. Like each of them died right before their biopics came out, like within a year or two.
Yeah, it's a shame.
I think there was a curse associated with that for a little while. Like a lot of musicians were like, I don't know if I should let them make a movie about me because it might kill me.
Isn't Jerry Lee still alive?
Jerry Lee Lewis, he might be.
Yes, I think he is. I mean, he lived way past the Dennis Quaid flick, which is, I got such mixed feelings on that film. Like,
yeah, he's still there. He's 85.
Dennis Quaid is phenomenal, and he's phenomenal in that film. But there's moments in that movie where it's like, is Dennis Quaid the best guy to? Screw it. He's hilarious. He's awesome. Because there's other moments in that film where when he stands up, well, don't thank God, thank Jerry Lee. And I'm like, oh my God, that's freaking perfect.
Yeah.
That's good stuff, man. That might be my number 3. If I had to put them in order, I would say that the Buddy Holly story is number 1, and Walk the Line's 2. Ray might be 3, and then I'd put Great Balls of Fire at 4. That might be tough, but yeah, there's been some good ones out there, man, for sure. So what's your favorite Cash song, and was it in this film?
Ooh, well, if I'm being honest, my favorite song is probably one of the newer ones.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it wouldn't have been in this movie. God, I'm trying to think of the name of it right now. It'll come to me. But as far as what's in this movie, I mean, they definitely picked a lot of the really well-known songs. But I've always been partial to Jackson, the little duet he does with June.
Yeah.
I always just thought that was a really nice little song. Folsom Prison Blues is obviously good. I mean, Ring of Fire is pretty iconic, but yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite from this soundtrack, but overall favorite song by Johnny Cash, yeah, it's probably from something in his later library for me.
Yeah, he had, let's see, his last album was 2014, Out Among the Stars. Ain't No Grave, which of course Undertaker used in WWE, which is still, I think, one of the better pieces of entrance music that he ever used. That chain, the sound of that chain, and it's, oh man, that's good stuff, dude.
Wow, I didn't know he released a children's album.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I'm looking at his filmography right now, in 1975, the Johnny Cash children's album.
Wow. The Man Comes Around from 2002 is an excellent album. Excellent album.
Yes, absolutely. That was part of the American series, right?
Yep. His cover of Rusty Cage by Soundgarden, dude. Woo! That's fire. That is straight up fire, that song, man.
Yeah, he just had such a unique style and voice that so many of his songs just stand out.
What about his cover of Personal Jesus?
Not super familiar with that.
That's on the same album. That's excellent, better than the original. And the original is pretty freaking great, but like his cover is great, is freaking awesome. So yeah, good stuff.
But yeah, he just, man, I didn't realize how many albums that guy released over the years. Damn.
Yeah, lot of material. He was very productive, man.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I just realized that my favorite song is one of his older ones, but I don't think it was in the movie. It's Boy
Ah.
Named Sue.
Oh, that is good.
And then there's, what's the one about building a car with parts he's stealing from the factory?
That sounds familiar, but I can't place it.
It might be something Cadillac or something like that. I can't remember, but yeah, those two actually, now that I think about it, would probably be my favorites.
Interesting. I'm sure I know that one. I think A Boy Named Sue is pretty much a crowd favorite. That's probably one of those people are yelling out from the crowd because it's a laugh long kind of song, you know.
One Piece at a Time, that's what it's called.
Oh, interesting. Cool. I can't swear that I've heard that. I'm sure I probably have, but
Yeah, it is about Cadillacs. And it's like the whole song is about him working on an assembly line and how he would just take a piece each day until he was able to build himself this weird Cadillac. And I think the album cover is literally him sitting in a Cadillac that looks like it's been pieced together from a bunch of Cadillacs that don't match each other.
That's good. What about, correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't they play Hurt in one of the trailers for Logan?
I thought it was actually in the movie, wasn't it?
Maybe it was in the film. That's another good callback for James Mangold being the director of both films too.
That might have been what played over the final credits. I'm not sure. But yes, it was definitely in one of the trailers for sure.
It's hard to know without doing a ton of research and reading biographies. I think Cash wrote a biography, if I'm not mistaken. So unless you really go read and do thorough investigation on what they got right in this, but I don't know. I always kind of felt like it's a mixture of both. And yeah, artistic license was used, but do I hope that the good bits actually happen? Of course. Do I think they left out some bad bits? Yeah, absolutely. I
Well,
don't
yeah,
think
like
we
the
didn't get the
fact that
worst
he
of
was
them.
still a drug addict.
Yeah.
I know that the one moment that was pretty authentic in this is him proposing to her. He did propose to her on stage. I have no idea if she tried to turn him down like Reese does in the movie, but yeah, I know that was really true.
I mean, the idea of dragging the girl out on stage, she's already out there, but like he kept wanting to do stuff in front of people because he just loved her so much. Like he just couldn't help it.
There is that awkward moment in the movie that I really like, though, where he tries to get her to sing a song that she recorded with her ex-husband and just like pisses her off so much that she walks off stage, and then he goes chasing her and then he destroys that bathroom.
Yeah. Oh, and I kept thinking, is that sink rigged to come off the wall or did he legit?
It wasn't.
It wasn't?
No,
That's good to know.
That's like a famous fact about this movie is they just kept filming, but like he was supposed to break a few specific things and he just kept going. So like when he breaks that sink off and it starts leaking into the room, like that's all unplanned.
And that's all, I think, isn't that all one shot? There's no takes in there, is there?
I mean, it's a short scene, but I
Yeah.
believe it's just one shot, and then they kind of
that's
just
good.
zoom in on him at the end as he's staring in the mirror, which is another requirement for a musical biopic. The main character must stare in the mirror at a depressing time in their life.
Yes. He did, and this goes back to the dinner scene with, or the Thanksgiving dinner scene with the family, with his dad. Like when he's sitting there after having destroyed her, he can't get her on the phone. He can't sit still. It's not just that he's breaking stuff. His leg is shaking and he can't keep his hand still. It's like he's got, I don't know if I call it passive aggressive, but it's like, I need an answer now. This is not enough. I need to know right now. I need it right now. Like he doesn't know what to do with himself in the meantime because he's so stirred up. Like I've been there. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure everybody's been there at one point, but it doesn't matter what you want. Like you're going to have to wait, or you're not going to like what you hear. And then you got to have to find a way to deal with it. I feel like a lot of this movie is him finding a way to deal with what he doesn't want to hear. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. And when I was doing the rewatch for this, I definitely forgot how down the movie gets at points. Like a lot of musical biopics kind of split evenly between the high points and the low points, and it felt like they really drew on his low points for this. But I guess, maybe that's what he felt was more important to his story in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get dark. Like you said, it's a trope, but it's a true thing. Like, are they ever going to make a biopic about a guy that didn't have drama? I don't know. Like, they've all had some
that
kind
would
of
be
drama.
boring, so probably not.
They've all had some kind of drama. I had been checking out a podcast which looks at the history of rock music, and I would recommend it to anybody listening. I think it's called The History of Rock and Roll in 500 Songs, and there's a list of 500 songs this guy's compiled, and one of the songs he does is Folsom Prison Blues. Well, again, I've been a grown man walking around this planet for a long time and didn't know this, but the inspiration for Folsom Prison, he did not write it. John did not write this song. He wrote parts of it, but there's a song out there called Crescent City Blues. And if you've never heard it, I'm ruining your day by telling you about it. It's on a 1953 concept album called Seven Dreams. And I'm trying to remember who sang it. Sang by Beverly Marr. And the whole song is about this girl being stuck in a town called Crescent City. I hear the train a coming. It's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Crescent City, and time keeps dragging on. Wow. And I heard that, and I was gutted. And I thought, well, that ruins my day, because here I thought Folsom Prison Blues was one of the most honest set of lyrics I've ever heard in my life. This guy was tortured. Well, not so tortured that he wrote every word. But, dude, if you look back at that time frame, a lot of guys, you can say stole, I guess, if you want, but a lot of guys borrowed a lot of stuff from a lot of other guys. And it was an accepted thing. Just like with the whole black and white thing. If a black artist wrote a song, a white man covered it just like that. I mean, just like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the music industry is real weird. I mean, back then, I'm sure copyright laws weren't as strict, and if they even existed, but like, there's even a scene in this movie where Johnny's like, oh, you hear what they did? They took our song, yep, blah, 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 and turned it into a two-step. Like, yep, he was all happy about it. Like, those guys, they would make their money off the tours and the albums and stuff, obviously, but they didn't care if other people were singing their music, because it just meant that the music they made was good.
And, back to that song, to the credit of how everything kind of marries together, when you take the lyrics of that song, it's a blasé song about a girl stuck in a town and her true love is gone, or he split, or whatever the moral of that song is. But you take those same lyrics and apply it to a guy looking out a prison window, and it becomes an entirely different song. And you're like, oh my God, that's the deepest thing I've ever heard. So all Cash had to do was change the scope. Like, the lyrics hit him in a much different way than it would hit a casual listener. So to his credit, he did take something that was already done, but tweak it and made it and changed it entirely. That the concept of what Crescent City Blues was next to Folsom Prison Blues, two entirely different songs. So I will say that he made it his own song.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, people cover each other all the time. I mean, we still see it. I feel like, did he like pay for the rights to the song, or did he just remake it and not give credit? Like, how did that go down?
That's a good question. Let's see. According to this, Crescent City Blues. Let's see. So the guy that put the album together that song appeared on, he was not credited on the original record, which was issued by Sun. But in the early 70s, after the song became popular, Cash paid the producer of the original album $75,000 following a lawsuit. So yeah, they had to sue. And it's like, there's no judge in the country, or in the world for that matter, who wouldn't hear the original song and say, yeah, you kind of took that song. So
yeah. Wow. Well, it happens.
It does happen, yeah. And again, kids, I'm not trying to detract from the genius of Johnny Cash. A lot of guys did a lot. And Elvis didn't write. How much stuff did Elvis actually write? And you could always make the argument that if not for the old black blues men back in the day, Elvis would never have had a career. And I would say that's probably pretty accurate. So, while he was motivated and inspired by gospel like Jerry Lee was, give credit where it's actually due. So I'm going to do that. But yeah, I mean, what about the idea we kicked off the show with, this whole idea? And I think the word's been co-opted for different situations by different people who want to label themselves or label their favorite singers as this. But this whole idea of the outlaw, I think it's overused. I think it's overdone. But if you had to name a couple of guys it would fit, Waylon Jennings, you'd have to say Waylon Jennings is an outlaw. You'd have to say, I mean, I got to say Cash is too, man. Again, I think it's overused, but dude, I think it fits him perfectly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was a lot of guys from that era who kind of fit the bill for that, I think. Like, even Willie Nelson, for as nice as that guy is, like, term kind of applies to him, too.
And Willie never gets enough credit. Willie is an excellent guitar player.
Willie Nelson's a great musician. I'm not going to say that I'm super familiar with all of his work, but Willie Nelson is an icon. And like anytime I see him pop up in something, I kind of smile because he's just still out there doing his thing. Like, he's just a senior citizen riding around on his tour bus smoking weed at this point. Like, he's doing what he wants to do, and I'm sure he got paid a boatload to make those dumb FedEx commercials, and I hope he made out like a bandit for those.
Yeah, and the weird way things tie together. We mentioned Waylon Jennings is portrayed in this movie by his kid Shooter. That ties in to the Buddy Holly story, because Waylon was on that tour the night that Buddy and the Big Bop and Richie Valens got on that plane, and they flipped a coin to see who would take the bus and who would take the plane. And Buddy tells Waylon before he gets on the bus, he says, it's an infamous line now years later, but he tells Waylon before he gets on the bus, I hope you freeze to death on that bus. Hope the heater's not working. And Waylon says, well, I hope your plane crashes.
Jesus.
Yeah, dude. And of course, after it happened, Waylon went through, I can't imagine the depression. The guy was, I'm sure, practically suicidal. Probably had to be talked off ledge more than one time because, how in the world could you predict something? But at the same time, you're living with that for the rest of your days. That's got to be an immense cross to bear. And it's like those two guys were tight. They were really good friends, but it's just weird how all that ties together sort of with all this and, Cash and the whole nine. And like, I mean, Cash was lucky to live as long as he did. He could have killed himself at any point with the stuff he was doing,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's super easy to OD on pills, and that was his big thing for a long time. So plus, if you're getting them from an unreliable source, you have no idea what you're actually getting.
True.
It's amazing that a lot of these guys have lived as long as they have with what they've done to their bodies. Like, just look at all of the guys from the Rolling Stones. Like, it's amazing that any of them are alive. I mean, all the dudes from the Red Hot Chili Peppers should be dead.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, it's crazy. I've always said Keith Richards is going to outlive all of us. He probably will. Yeah, we could probably do multiple parts on just Cash's discography. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be said for a lot of the music he did. Again, not a country music fan, never going to be, but I just don't. When I hear his voice, I don't hear country. And maybe that's me putting my own spin on this because I'm not a country person. I'm willing myself to not hear a country voice, but dude, I don't hear it. I just hear a guy with a unique voice who was a rock and roll guy, who was a rockabilly guy. And he had something to say. And this was his therapy in a day and age when it was frowned upon, I'm sure, for a grown man to talk to a counselor. That kind of thing never happened, I'm sure. But this was his therapy. This was his way of speaking and getting things out in the open and talking about his life when maybe he couldn't talk about it with his family. I don't know, but I don't know. Do you consider him a country singer?
I mean, I'm weird about that too. Like, I don't consider him straight country, and I'd say the same thing about Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson and a lot of those guys. Uh, but it's because they mix genres. Like you said, he brings in rockabilly. There's a couple songs that get close to the rock and roll thing. There's some that are just straight up gospel. Like, they're all sort of southern based sounds, but yeah, I agree with you that he's not just a traditional country music artist, but I also understand why that genre attaches itself to him, because that is where he came from.
Yeah, it's like we said, man. Like you said, it's lucky those guys were still alive, or some of them are anyway. I mean, and plus when you think about it, back in the day, what kind of shape were those tour buses in? What kind of shape were the planes in? I mean, the pilot that flew the plane that killed Buddy Holly, Big Bopper and Richie Valens, he was a rookie pilot. I mean, he had no business probably flying at that time. Don't know how many hours he had in the air at that time, but dude, he was pushing the yoke down when he was supposed to be pulling up. He was completely backwards and put the plane into a mountain, for crying out loud. Like, it's a wonder we didn't lose everybody. Like, I don't know, dark roads, country roads, no street lights. I mean, hard rain, crazy turns. Yeah, it's a wonder any of them made it. Rolling Stones are other. I mean, good Lord, look at all the times. I mean, they've been going forever too, by the way. I mean, and did all the drugs and did all the drinking known to man, and they're still kicking. That's insane.
Yeah, they're on their like 30th retirement tour.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is wild how we hear maybe every few years you'll hear like so and so's tour bus got in an accident this way. It's like, with how many people are traveling around on those things,
yeah,
you would think we'd hear more about that kind of stuff, but we don't.
Yeah. I mean, well, Cliff Burton from Metallica, their tour bus overturned, I think was the story, and he was it killed him. So yeah, it still happens, but I don't know how much it happens these days. I mean, usually it's a very freak thing. So, but yeah, I'm glad we had Cash for a good long time, and again, I'm glad he got to make music up to the end. I'm happy that he did. Let's break it down here, man. What if you had to put a bow on this? What's your last word on Walk the Line? What do you think?
I think a testament to this movie is the fact that they were able to almost make an entire parody movie out of it. Is a sign that this movie kind of set the tone for musical biopics going forward. It might seem similar to a lot of the ones that have come out since, but again, this one sort of established a lot of those tropes first. So it's a great movie. I think anyone who's either a casual or hardcore fan of Johnny Cash should take the time to at least see it once.
Yeah, it's very much worth a watch. I mean, if it's somebody you're into, or even just casually as a music fan, it's definitely worth watching. And plus, the fact that Phoenix threw himself into this role and dedicated himself to it as much as he did, not just the physical look, but the voice, the playing. I mean, I love that dedication from an actor. I love when it gets that deep. Saw the same thing with Jamie Foxx with Ray. I mean, just immense dedication. I don't know. I just think it makes it more real, and I think it makes it more important. So. I'm always going to be a fan of Cash. As I said before, I've always appreciated his music. I'm always going to listen to his stuff, even the stuff from later years. As Chris said earlier, I do dig a lot of that stuff as well. So yeah, we definitely vouch for this flick here on the 6M. So if you haven't seen it, by all means watch it. And if you haven't watched it in a long time, for goodness sake, go watch it again, because I guarantee you might pull something out of it that you either forgotten about or maybe missed the last time you saw it. So either way, I think you're going to dig it. It's a really good flick. So go out of your way to see it. And that is Walk the Line. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.